We're really excited to have you with us. And this morning's event really is all about the next generation of early years professionals. So the purpose of our call this morning really is to share a little bit more about that nursery life, explain a little bit more about who we are, what we do, and why we're here. And then to talk you through a little bit of more detail of our platform and what that already does, and the ways in which we think we can already support you as teachers and tutors, and of course also your students. And then really beyond that, we're keen to open up the floor to have a bit of a discussion, talk about some of the big questions around how we find the right people to come into the profession, how we are teaching them already, where are the biggest challenges and the biggest pain points in trying to support their learning, and what we can do to work together to make that happen. So to start off with then, a little bit of background on us as an organisation and why we're here and what we're here to do. So I'm the CEO and founder of That Nursery Life. I started the beginning of my career, the first 6 or 7 years was spent on the front line of early years. I started out as an early years practitioner, went on to become Senko, and then spent about 4 years running settings of my own, first of all in Somerset, and then in Wimbledon in South London. So I saw firsthand how important, but also how difficult it is to find and keep the best staff, and how to keep them supported as they keep learning, and to keep pace really with the changing nature of the sector and all of the different challenges that brings. I reached a point, I think, as a lot of people do, of really needing to step away from the front line of the sector. Those pressures and challenges become pretty intense after a while. And I was keen to explore other opportunities that I could do for myself, but was also really keen to keep at least a foot in the early years sector, having grown to know and love it so well over those years. So That Nursery Life, or TNL, started really just as a side project for me, as a simple blog. But very quickly found that the sorts of posts that I was putting out there were getting a really good reception from the community. Initially, over the first, I think, sort of 3 or 4 months, had almost 15,000 different people access the content that we were publishing, or at that time that I was publishing. And it quite quickly became clear that I needed to grow this into something more substantial, that there was a real need that needed to be filled. So over the months that followed, TNL continued to grow quite organically, move from just being a blog to being more of a sort of all-round information portal. And then particularly over the last 18 months, we've really accelerated that growth with a number of new people joining the team over that time, and our digital platform itself really transforming into a, we think, pretty comprehensive suite of tools and features and resources, which we've got now, and we've got some really exciting plans for growth over the year ahead and beyond. Our mission, as we've stated it now, is a pretty simple one. We're here to improve the positive impact of early childhood care and education by informing, equipping, and empowering sector professionals. It's really important to me personally, and to us as a team, that we really focus on the individual professional. We think that a lot of the sector is focused on quite a top-down way of communicating information and changes, whether that's from government or within an employment situation of managers being the conduit for that information flowing down to their staff. Our real focus is trying to build a place where individual professionals, regardless of where they work or whether they work, whether they're students or whether they're more experienced in their career, having a shared place that they can come that it offers reliable, accurate information to support them personally on their journey through this profession. So that, in a nutshell, is TNL and what we're here and why we're here to do it. And hopefully that makes clear from the off really why we're so keen to engage more closely with the people that are on this call, the tutors, the teachers who are supporting the next generation of those professionals, because we want to be right there beside you, and we want to make sure that the work that we're doing is as useful to you and to your students as it possibly can be. I'm going to hand over to Chris now, so that he can take us through some of the slides that we've got ready, to share a little bit more about his role in the organisation and to talk us through the platform itself. So Chris, if you're ready, I will hand over to you.
Yeah, and good morning, everybody. Thank you, T, for taking the time to tune in and listen a bit more about our platform, I guess. So yes, this presentation is just going to be, I guess, a very, very, very quick primer in terms of what we have in platform, why we're essentially putting what we are on platform, how we're addressing things like our mission statement with our content, but also very much an appeal for you to get involved, both in terms of if you want to contribute, if there are things that you would like us to be essentially running with on platform that we're not, if there are resources that we can provide that you feel the sector and your students aren't really being serviced with, all that sort of thing. So if you don't mind, Sam, kicking off, then we can run through. So all of our content essentially is built around our mission statement, which is to inform, equip, and empower early years professionals. And by inform, essentially that's content which well, exactly what it says in the tin, I guess, in terms of just providing some insight and some background into, be it key sector concepts, be it into what's going on in the sector at the moment, key developments, and so forth. Equip, essentially that's more giving tools that practitioners can use, either be it more off the peg things, so for example, an activity plan, which sometimes can be a bit more adult centered, sometimes a bit more child centered, but nonetheless things that you can just say it's a Tuesday morning, you know that there's during your day maybe going to be, an hour or 90 minutes where you've not really had the time to fully flesh out or plan out your day. It's something that you can pick up with the children and might be quite interesting both in terms of practice or really engage them and be a good bit of fun. And we've got several other lines of content in that vertical as well. And also to empower. So this is content that I guess would service more in terms of developing the fundamental skill set of practitioners and of students, providing them insight perhaps into concepts that they might not have been able to have access to before, challenging certain things within the sector as well. So in terms of maybe things around practice and pedagogies that aren't necessarily working anymore, or maybe they're alternative viewpoints, or as well, obviously around things such as how prejudice, be it racism or other forms of prejudice, can have a very negative effect on early years and how we can challenge those. So one thing that we try to do as well is we grade content by experience profile. So essentially by that, we mean we have several different, what we would call horizontals in terms of experience. Now, it's very broad brush and lots of pieces of content will perhaps overlap multiple levels of experience. But nonetheless, we try to ensure that our content not only fulfills each element of our mission statement, but is also accessible to different audiences, services, different, I guess, levels of skill, levels of experience, and so forth. So if you don't mind, Sam, just bumping on to the next slide. So essentially what we want to cover off is various different levels of experience from, so for example, many of your students, perhaps they've never worked in a setting before, or maybe they've just very briefly done a bit of work in a setting, whether you're dealing, for example, with trainees or apprentices, or just somebody who's come in at a very junior role and is on their first days, weeks, months in the job. So if you can see here, we have our content matrix, which we use. This is, again, quite broad brush, but essentially to inform certain lines of content that we run with. So for example, again, you can see we have these 4 tiers: new, established, professional, leader. New, as I covered, that's probably more relevant to most of your students, I would imagine, in terms of their experience level, although I dare say there'll also be some people who perhaps they've got some industry experience and they've then decided to follow that up with study to improve their knowledge and their practice and so forth. So obviously there'll be things in the established category too that appeals to them. Now you as educators, likely the leader or the professional tiers will probably be providing more of the content that might be giving you fresh insights or perhaps exposing you to new ideas and new skills. But nonetheless, as you can see there, we have various lines of content which at least initially are designed to hit each element of this matrix. So, for example, leadership content. And to give you an example of that, a leader would be maybe they're a setting manager, maybe somebody with a huge array of experience in the sector, somebody who's perhaps an educator of educators in the sector, and working its way through. Established might be somebody who they've got a number of years experience maybe, or at least a couple of years experience. They've got a lot more that they can kind of draw on in terms of what they know about their work. And when something comes up, oh, well, it's very likely that they've encountered it before. Professional, again, somebody who they may be more of a supervisor role, or they may be moving into management within a setting environment. So all different kinds of content, essentially to attack different components of work and different objectives and different experience levels. So in terms of practice and learning needs as well, one thing we try to do, obviously it's quite difficult to do, but nonetheless, we try to be agnostic in terms of things like pedagogies and so forth, simply because we feel that exposing practitioners to a range of new ideas, a range of techniques, a range of theories will only help their practice. So even if they find through kind of interrogating their knowledge and through the day-to-day of work or the day-to-day of study that there may be pedagogies, there may be approaches that they feel are better suited to the work they do, or that they feel has greater impact for children. Nonetheless, it never hurts to be exposed to another idea, and obviously out of that can come synthesis of lots of nice new ideas too. So in terms of practice and learning needs, we would say, for example, and coming back again to some of that, I guess, more junior facing content, we have how-tos, activity plans, we have product reviews, children's book reviews, practitioner book reviews, we have explainers as well. So be it, maybe around feeding, be it around elements of nutrition, A to Z of concepts, and just quick primers on areas of practice as well. Obviously, as well, we delve into theory and more detailed elements of practice, and we draw on a broad range of subject matter experts in, again, a diversity of fields. And one thing as well that we are building out at present is CPD and training materials that can be a support to people as part of their ongoing development, and also a support to those within education segments. So just to give you a very, very, very quick rundown of some example content, activity plans. So essentially they're one way that we provide off the peg content. As I mentioned earlier, maybe somebody's at a little bit of a loss as to how to cover some of the day, or maybe there's an element of practice that they feel that maybe they've not been fully serving the children and kind of empowering them with at that time, and they think, okay, I'm very tired. What's something that can inspire me today or this week, and build it into my plan. And activity plans are just one of the elements of our content that can do this. So this is just a quick capture of what one of our activity plans might look like. This is one of our briefer ones, actually, truth be told. So they range from very, very quick 1-2 minute reads through to things that are a bit more, I guess, substantive, a bit longer, a bit more detailed. It depends how child-led they are as well, how adult-led, just running through. So essentially it provides almost something like a shopping list in terms of what you need to prepare to deliver the activity plan. There's a bit of background on it often as to why this might be a useful thing to do, what elements of the curriculum it addresses as well. And yeah, just doing the activity, which quite often will break down, for example, across ages, because obviously not somebody who's, or a child who's 11 months old isn't going to be able to engage with an activity plan the same way as a child that's 26 months old. But yeah, just something which is quite a useful tool, particularly for junior practitioners who maybe are not very confident in their practice. Maybe they've not run certain elements of practice on their own before, and just something that's a little bit more by way of hand-holding. Policy packs and tool sets, this is another component of what we do. So this is something which, again, our policy packs have elements that range all the way from the more, I guess, again, hand-holding content for some more junior people, or to providing insight, all the way through to quite detailed elements of practice, or even things that kind of challenge people's fundamental practice. One example would be, most recently we've launched an anti-racism pack, simply because a lot of practitioners, even ones with decades of experience, were saying to us, in terms of ensuring that their practice is sensitive to certain cultural issues, or so that they're not even inadvertently embedding racism in their practice, making sure that children from a diversity of backgrounds, races and so forth, are treated fairly and have all of the positive things that other children would get to. Just making sure essentially that we were interrogating people's practice, providing frameworks by which they could address the issue and so forth, and just empowering practitioners to just be better at what they do. Maybe starting out with the best of intentions, but they just wouldn't have been facilitated to develop a more in-depth knowledge about the theories behind this and other elements of practice. We also conduct sector interviews. Now, sometimes sector interviews will be with practitioners or with educators such as yourself. Sometimes it will be with politicians, for example. A recent example we've got there is from an Andrea Leadsom interview that we did, because obviously there was that review that came out very recently regarding the first 1,001 days of a child's life. We've also interviewed shadow ministers and the head of the all-party parliamentary group for childcare and so forth. So it's one way that we can both update practitioners and make sure that everybody's up to speed on not only what is happening, but what the thinking is behind it by decision makers and by people in the sector, or they can be exposed to ideas from their peers and other people working in the sector. It's essentially a way of being able to share practice, being able to share news, being able to share updates in a way that just gives a bit more insight. We're quite pleased, I think, with the range of interviews that we've been getting, and I think they've been, pretty helpful in making sure that people understand the whys of why things are happening and not merely that they are happening. So yeah, just a very, very, very quick explore of the platform. So for example, there's the latest content page, which somebody say you would click on it, and essentially what that would do is that would give you just an insight into what are the latest things we put on the platform, just so that you're up to speed. So there'll be more newsworthy items, sometimes there'll be things that are tied to just their contemporaneous, so things around, for example, our early year calendar, such as today being William Shakespeare's birthday, where we've got something on the platform about that, and that would be one of the first things that you'd see. So it's just a way essentially of seeing what's new, what the latest things are. We also use a filtering system, and that is a way to essentially help you get to what you need to faster. And it's a way essentially that you can almost see it like chapters within a textbook, just as much as you can see it a way of just getting to casually browsing and getting to an area of interest. So this, for example, is just, you can see on the left there, kind of activity plans and tools. So this would be one element of the site that you would click through. And essentially it works a little bit like a information tree. As in, you can go through different steps that just get more granular on areas of practice as you go. So, and again, you can see the same thing here with reviews. So these would predominantly be book reviews. And then you can see that, for example, you can now filter through to children's book reviews, so that if, for example, you're thinking, okay, we need to update our reading lists, or rather suggested reading lists for, okay, these books are, we think, particularly good at these elements of practice, or, embedding these things, or, just really engage children in this, then, okay, let's go through to there. So who is TNL for as well? This is obviously an important question, one thing that we constantly interrogate ourselves on, just to make sure that we are still fulfilling our mission statement and that we are serving the sector in the best possible way. So essentially it's for practitioners and for future practitioners. So from, as I mentioned earlier, students and trainees taking their first steps, all the way through to those who have decades and decades of experience and perhaps are now, setting leaders or educators like yourself. And essentially what we want to do, as discussed earlier too, is with the mission statement to inform, equip and empower early years professionals. And one thing we want to do is, I put there 360-degree support, and we really do mean that, as in we want to have content and we want to have tools and facility for training that ensures that there is both the pastoral element, so that practitioners and people working in the sector know that there is that peer support there, that they can draw on the insights of people who maybe there's something they've been struggling with, and they can see, okay, well, I'm not the only person struggling with that, that's for sure. All the way through to very kind of detailed and granular elements of practice with subject matter experts taking the lead on those areas of content. And one thing that's very important to us is that TNL will always be free to practitioners and to students, trainees and so forth. So if you're an individual working in the sector, or if you're an individual that wants to work in the sector or is training, then we will always be free for you. So one element too that we are developing, and this is kind of very much an ongoing project, is CPD. And one thing we're going to be able to do soon is to be able to track study as well, which might be quite interesting in terms of how you engage with your students. It might be quite a useful tool for you, insofar as obviously there are the elements of practice that we're going to be building up more and more on. We're going to be getting more and more subject matter experts writing really quite granular information on the platform. and students will be able to register, as well as obviously practitioners in settings, and whether you're an educator, whether say you're a setting manager or supervisor, you'll be able to go through and, for example, see what your students or what your colleagues have been studying or reading or working on. You can be able to essentially set things like, oh, this would be quite interesting, or yeah, just keep an eye on or track what they've been working on, so that you can follow up with them in terms of their studies and areas that maybe they can, further develop their knowledge. One thing, as mentioned earlier, that we very much do not do is we don't advocate for any one approach or pedagogy, because one thing that we think is very, very important for the sector is people getting out of their bubble and being exposed to a diversity of opinions and perspectives and frameworks. Because a diversity of knowledge, even if when interrogated somebody thinks it may not be best suited to their practice or what they're doing, nonetheless never hurts, and it stops people essentially getting into bad habits and never challenging them or getting out of them.
Brilliant. Well, I suppose to come towards the end of our allotted time.
There's also something I'd very quickly like to jump in
as well,
which is, so this final slide, emphatically we mean that, the fact that we need your ideas, expertise and voice as well on the platform. So please do, if it's a matter of, for example, some of the brilliant things, Claire, that you raised there, that we can either provide more of, or actually, for example, in terms of that communication thing, there's really not much at all on platform with that. That's really useful for me now to know, and for Sam to know, that that's an area that we really should be providing more focus on. There will be plenty of other areas where, because obviously you bring such acute insight, it would be so useful for us to know that these are things that we should be producing more content on, or content even at all on. And again, in terms of contributors, we always look for more sector voices and subject matter experts. So do please, there's my email, chris@thatnurserylife.com. And obviously there's a website too, which hopefully you'll all know anyway, but thatnurserylife.com. Do please get in touch and to provide any insight. If you want to put your hand up and say, actually, I think it'd be really great if you had something on this, and I'm happy to have a discussion about potentially contributing, do please contact us.
Yeah, thank you again, everyone. Good to be able to share all this information with people, and we'll be keeping in touch over the days and weeks ahead, because we're really keen to try and build our new generation of practitioners into our network as much as we can. Have a lovely day, everyone, and a great weekend.